Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak, Korash. Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father, meaning He is, He exists, He to be. Ba'in Hada, Sham name, Yahweh Shai, being the name of the only begotten Son, meaning He delivered, He saves, Rechak, Korash, Holy Spirit. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace and blessings to the elected nation Israel. Back at it again with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Lord willing, lesson is edifying. I'm the brother Adawan. Just getting straight to it through the spirit. All right. And this is really going into, how America is adding to that resume, of being hated by these other nations, man. Okay. And in particular, what's going on between America and Canada, which is supposed to be, a close bordered ally, right? But if you're getting into it with your own so-called, next door neighbor, right? And the rest of the neighborhood already hates you, you're only messing up your own alliances and network. Okay, but this is biblical prophecy about how Babylon the Great would be that sore thumb in the sight of the nations, man. And how they would be hated and greatly despised, as it says in the book of Obadiah. Let's get it real quick. This is the book of Obadiah. I'm going to start from the top, Lord willing. It says Obadiah 1:1. This is the vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise, and let us rise up against her in battle. Okay? Obadiah 1:1 in the NLT. This is the vision that the sovereign Lord revealed to Obadiah concerning the land of Edom, which in particular represents America. All right? And the Edomites are you so-called, white people, man. All right? The people who descend from Mount Seir. Okay? It says, we have heard a message from the Lord that an ambassador was sent to the nations to say, get ready, everyone, let's assemble our armies and attack Edom. All right. It said, behold, I have made thee, back in the KJV, Obadiah verse 2, behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Right. And that's exactly what has happened, man. These devils are greatly despised, man. A lot of these other nations are starting to hate Babylon, okay, more and more. You see? Psalms 107, verse 39. Again, they are minished and brought low through oppression, affliction, and sorrow. He poureth contempt upon princes and causeth them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. And see, the Most High did that to his own people. But he's getting ready to do that upon these devils, man. Okay? In a metaphorical sense and in a literal sense. But, nonetheless, let me continue on. All right? How these devils, they made small among the heathen. They're greatly despised. Okay? Meaning these other nations, they ain't rocking with Babylon no more, man. Okay? Salakia. This is Obadiah verse 2 in the AMP Amplified Bible Version. It says, behold, Edom, I shall humiliate you and make you small among the nations. You are greatly despised. Woo! That's it, man. Okay? So these other nations, they're starting to hate Babylon more and more. All right? And what's going on between Canada and America is that you got article right here by endtimeheadlines.org. It says Trump ends all trade talks with Canada over digital service tax. This is from June 27th, 2025. Okay. So basically, Canada is getting into it with America, trying to tax them for their big tech companies. You can read this article on End Time Headlines. Okay. But then also, Canada had another retaliatory tariff, all right, against Babylon the Great. It says Canada retaliates against U.S. tariffs with steep hike on American steel imports. It says, in a bold move following President Donald Trump's decision to terminate trade negotiations, Canada has imposed a significant increase in duties on American steel imports. The decision, announced late Friday, introduces an import quota with a 50% surcharge applied to certain U.S. steel exceeding this limit. Whew. That's a steep hike, man. Okay? 50% charge. Imagine you pay, let's just say, for instance, right, let's do the math real quick. Imagine you pay $10 for a sandwich, but because of the fact that you got into an issue with the owner of the shop. Now every time you in particular come to go buy that same $10 sandwich, he wants to charge 50% extra, man. All right, that's a $5 increase right there. So you went from paying $10 to $15, man. Okay? So that's basically what's going on between Babylon and Canada. Now, going back to the article, okay, it says, this retaliatory measure aims to shield Canada's domestic industry from what Canadian officials describe as an unjust U.S. tariffs. It says, according to a statement from Canada's Finance Minister, Francois Philippe Champagne, as reported by NBC News. It says the escalation comes in response to Trump's abrupt half-of-trade talks triggered by Canada's planned digital services tax on U.S. technology companies, with Trump labeled a direct and blatant attack on our country in a Truth Social post. The U.S. had previously doubled its tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, raising them from 25% to 50% earlier, June 2025, a move that significantly impacted Canada, the largest foreign supplier of these materials to the U.S. Canada's new steel import quota is designed to protect its domestic steel industry, which has faced challenges due to Trump's trade policies. You see, this is the Daily Mail reports that exceeding the quota will result in a hefty 50% surcharge on specific American steel products, a measure aimed at making Canadian steel more competitive. Right, so let's grab a quick precept real quick. This is the book of Ecclesiastes or Sirach, chapter 20, verse 14. It says, the gift of a fool shall do thee no good when thou hast it, neither yet of the envious for his necessity. For he looketh to receive many things for one. And that's the type of spirit these Babylonians come in, especially Donald Trump, America, which Trump is nothing but a puppet. But at the end of the day, that's the type of spirit these devils come in. They try to receive many things for one. Here it is. He's putting a tariff on you for doing business with him. And then, in return, to try to retaliate, or work things out, he's not trying to talk. But yet he wants more from you than what he's bringing to the table. Okay? So it says, he giveth little and upbraideth much. He openeth his mouth like a crier. Today he lendeth, and tomorrow will he ask it again. Such an one is to be hated of the Most High and man. And this is the type of spirit Babylon is coming in. The fool saith, I have no friends. I have no thank for all my good deeds. And they that eat my bread speak evil of me. How oft and of how many shall he be laughed to scorn? For he knoweth not aright what it is to have, and it is all one unto him as if he had it not. Right, man. That's the type of spirit these devils are coming into. You see? So they're going to be laughed and scorned, man, by these other nations who are increasingly hating Babylon more and more as time progresses. Because America, through Trump, is continually doing things that are adding to that rap sheet to make them be hated in the sight of the nations, to make them be greatly despised, which is biblical prophecy. Yet Trump is trying to play the card that, that America's the victim. But America's going around being a bully to these other nations. But they want to play the victim card. That's the whole MO of an Edomite. Okay? But nonetheless, man, when we see these things, we rejoice because we know that the end is near. All right? This is Habakkuk 2:7. Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Right, so these other nations, they're going to suddenly turn up against Babylon, man. And it says they're going to be for booties unto them, meaning this place is going to be spoiled. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee. because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Right, and that can also apply to literal violence and bloodshed, but also in an economic sense as well, because the scriptures say, basically, if you defraud the poor from his wages, you're as a bloodshedder, man. Okay? When you basically cut off a poor man from being able to make money, that's as if you're shedding blood in his sight, because you're taking away his living, so to speak. All right, Sirach Ecclesiastes 34. I'm gonna start at verse 21. It says, "The bread of the needy is their life. He that defraudeth him thereof is a man of blood. He that taketh away his neighbor's living slayeth him. And he that defraudeth the labor of his hire is a bloodshedder." Right. Because you're basically leaving him out for dead, because he's not going to have a way to be able to provide for him and his family, or his house. Okay, because you're cutting off his source of income, And these devils love to say that. I'll get you fired. Right? They love to say that shit because they're men of blood. All right? They're a nation of violence. Okay? But let's go back to the article real quick. It says, the impact. I'll read this part. It says I might have read this already, but let me read it again. It says the Daily Mail reports that exceeding the quota will result in a hefty 50% surcharge on specific American steel products, a measure aimed at making Canadian steel more competitive. This follows a broader U.S. trade strategy under Trump, who has imposed tariffs as high as 50% on steel and aluminum, 25% on foreign-made vehicles and auto parts, and a 10% rate on Canadian energy products. The impact of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. steel industry, already struggling, remains uncertain. The recent merger of U.S. Steel Corporation with Japan's Nippon Steel underscores the sector's difficulties with declining sales reported over recent years. Despite these trade tensions, Canada remains the second largest trading partner of the U.S., with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement governing much of the trade relationship, though non-compliant imports face the 25% tariff rate. This tit-for-tat tariff escalation highlights ongoing trade frictions between the two nations, with Canada's finance minister emphasizing the need to protect domestic industries, as reported by the Daily Mail. Champagne stated that the government's actions are a direct response to unjust U.S. tariffs, with Trump threatening to further tariff hikes. Within a week, the future of U.S.-Canada trade relations remains precarious, potentially affecting industries and consumers on both sides of the border. All right. So, this is just adding to the fact that these other nations, they hate Babylon, man. And Babylon is responsible for these things, man. But we understand that, it's ultimately going to lead up to these other nations teaming up together to destroy this place. As it says in the book of Revelation 17 and 16, "In the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore." The 10 horns represent the EU, which will both work together to destroy America along with the other nations by shooting missiles upon this place. Revelation 17 to 16, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire," from the nuclear missiles. Jeremiah 50 and 12. "Your mother shall be sore confounded." What's the mother nation of America? Great Britain. It says, "She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness," and it says a dry land and a desert. Hindermost of the nations represent America, the most western nation, right? So it says it's going to be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert, because that's what the missiles is going to cause this place to be. So America's mother, Great Britain, is going to be sore confounded. She's going to be ashamed, and she's going to shoot missiles upon America along with these other nations. Obadiah verse 7, "All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him." So those who ate their bread, meaning they did deals with them, they traded with them, they had an alliance with them, they're going to turn their back and betray one another. Okay? So this is adding to the tension. Now, I pulled up Chat GPT, and I asked Chat GPT, I said, what would be the effect of Canada putting the tariff on the steel exports to the U.S.? If Canada were to impose tariffs on steel exports to the U.S., it would have significant economic, industrial, and potential effects on both countries, especially on the U.S. economy, which relies on Canadian steel for many key industries. It says, effect of Canadian tariffs on steel exports to the U.S. Increased costs for U.S. manufacturers. It says Canadian steel is a major import for U.S. industries like automotive, constructive, machinery, oil, and gas infrastructure. Tariffs would raise the cost of imported steel, increasing production costs for U.S. manufacturers. This could lead to higher prices for cars, appliances, and buildings. Job risk in U.S. downstream industries. Higher input costs might force U.S. companies to cut costs, which could lead to layoffs, reduced hours, offshoring of manufacturing. Steel-consuming industries employ far more workers than steel producers. Trade disputes and retaliation. The U.S. might respond with counter tariffs, escalating into a trade war. This could affect other sectors, agriculture, energy, lumber. It would strain U.S.-Canada trade relations, possibly threatening USMCA cooperation. It says, supply chain disruption. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of steel to the U.S. Disrupting this relationship will cause delays in delivery, need for new suppliers, reduce competitiveness in global markets. Domestic inflation in the U.S. Higher production costs passed on to consumers equal rising prices for steel-based products could contribute to broader inflationary pressure in the U.S. economy. Okay. It says area affected. Manufacturing costs, rising production costs for steel-dependent industries, employment, potential job losses, or reduced hours, which the scriptures speak about how there's going to be lack of employment, right? Scriptures speak about how the sound of the grinding is low. Okay, scriptures say there shall be no work for Egypt, right? It says trade relations, risk of retaliation, and USMCA tension, which is already in effect. It says consumer prices, increase in prices for cars, tools, appliances, housing, supply chain disruption, and sourcing challenges. Key takeaway, a Canadian tariff on steel exports to the U.S. would hurt U.S. industry and consumers, potentially lead to a trade retaliation cycle, and damage cross-border economic cooperation. So basically, the point of this whole premise is that this is just adding to the fact that these other nations are going to hate Babylon more and more. Babylon's greatly despised. All right, so, what's the end all be all of that? The nations teaming up together to shoot missiles upon this place. All you that bend the bow round about her, spare no arrows, man. And this is the work of the Heavenly Father because of the wickedness that America has committed. So when a person is wicked, one thing the Lord can do against them is to raise up an adversary against them. All right. And so that's what the Lord has been doing with these other nations. He's raising up adversaries against America, Babylon the Great, because of their wickedness, man. You see? So this is adding to that tension. But Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. We give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kakodash. Double honors to the apostles and others, great Muslim, every well, peace, and blessings to the elected nation of Israel. Shalom, above all.